everyone, and welcome to A Manager's Journey with me, Josh Richards. If you visited my blog and have come from there, or if you've come across the channel on YouTube, then welcome. I've decided to set this up to be a companion to the A Manager's Journey blog, a link to which is in the description. So let's move on to breaking down two sessions that I put on in recent weeks, starting with a 15-minute session that I ran at training with the ladies teams at Rushmoor Community. As I said, it is a 15-minute session and it's focusing on pressing in small groups. So ideally looking at how the players shape the press, their 1v1 defending, which includes body shape, arriving quickly and then slowing down. Can we then arrive on first touch possibly, but also their communication with the pressing. Due to the nature of that night's training layout, it was a circuit of 3 sessions all happening at once. So I ran this one 3 times and found that 15 minutes was more than enough time to progress the session, whilst also letting the players go about each part with enough time. This session runs well with about 8 to 10 players, so that's 4v4 or a 5v5 in an area of 24 by 10 split into two 12 by 10 boxes. The first part is simple enough. One team starts in possession in their box and the defender comes in to win the ball. It's very basic, it's a 4v1, but it's just aimed at getting the ball moving and getting lots of touches. So the team in possession have to accumulate 4 passes, and upon doing so they'll look to transfer it to the other team, at which point the defender will recover, and then the team that was in possession will send one player in to then become the defender. Obviously, the new team in possession will look to keep possession and make their 4 passes and transfer it. Each time a transfer is made, look to have a different player going in each time as a defender. Now I approach this as more of a free game, the only stipulation being for the in possession team to not force the ball over with their transfer, encourage them to keep it until the transfer is on, but obviously in a 4v1 situation, the transfer should more or less always be on. Now looking for when to progress it is again simple enough. I personally did so after everyone had had their turn as being a defender, but if the transfers are quick enough and the teams are popping the ball about, then maybe keep it going for 2 goes each, or increasing the pass requirement. It's all down to you as the coach and simply gauging it. Progressing to the second part of the session now, which is very similar to the one before it. However, upon completing 4 passes, another defender will come in, and then possibly after another 4, another defender will come in, and so on. This is where you really want the elements of the session to be focused in and worked on. The chances of the first defender going in to win the ball are slim, but can you get them to shape the first stage of a press and keep the ball in one area? Shadow pressing is in effect, cutting off passing lanes and angles. It's when the second and third defender come in that the ball should be won. You want the defender to exhibit body shape and movement to reduce passing options, but also encourage the other defenders that haven't come in yet to communicate so that the ball can be placed and boxed into an area for the next defender to come in and win it. Ideally, and it happened a few times in this session, you'll want your first defender to force the ball to the area where the 2 boxes meet so the next defender can simply come in and win it. To make it slightly more competitive, you could enforce a forfeit for the team that has the most defenders in, although be careful with this as it might detract slightly from some of the elements this session is asking of the defending team. Once possession has been lost or the ball forced out of play, a ball is then rolled in by the coach to the new team in possession. It's up to you whether to wait for the players to recover from defending, mainly down to whether you want quick transitions. A little progression to this can be for the defending team to dribble or pass the ball back into their box once they have won possession. Obviously, the dispossessed team will look to win it back, so it could end up being a 2v4. Again, a point system will be put in place on this as a small progression. The final part of this session is a normal 4v4 game of possession in the whole space, so opening up the 2 boxes into the one larger. It's a free game, but encourages the out of possession team to shape a press and force the ball into one area before attempting to win it or force it out of play. It's key though that the basic principles aren't lost now it is a game, but if anything, it could be harder as there's more space and movement from the in possession team, which will cause the defending players to think about their own movement and how they restrict passing lanes. Although this session is very much isolated in the context of that night's training, I feel it's a good springboard off into a whole session dedicated to looking at pressing. I've done the first part of this session with my under-10s team, but if you're wanting to do this session with the focus of pressing, then maybe going from under-12 upwards. As I say, I think that this session touched upon the basic principles and will allow you to use it whether you want to incorporate a high press or a mid press. I'd personally say this focuses slightly more on the first line of pressing, but can be expanded out to include a second line of pressing and developed on in more match-related scenarios until breaking it down in 11 versus 11. The final session that I'll be breaking down is one that I did with my under-10s team. This session works on a lot of things with regards to the tactical or positional sides of the game. We use this session more to focus on getting the girls to hold their positions, when attacking and encourage more movement from our forward players to move into spaces to receive the ball. As you can see, all we did was divide our playing area into 3 horizontal channels, roughly the same size, with the middle one split into 2 boxes. For this example, the red team are the attacking team, looking to keep possession, create space and opportunities on goal, whereas the blues were defending the goal and upon winning the ball back, look to keep possession by playing through the 3 channels. The only parameters for this session was that the players had to stay in their channels or boxes to begin with. Letting them play how they see it, I encouraged them not to force the ball forwards and to be aware that passing sideways or back to a defender is just as acceptable as playing the ball forwards. Getting the girls to stay in their boxes may seem restrictive, however encouraging them to move and create their own space to lose a marker and receive the ball, or doing a bit of skill to beat a player due to the title of normal spaces. By restricting them slightly one way, force them to use their football brains and work on things done in previous weeks. The only progression that we used for this was opening the game up and allowing the girls to move freely, still looking to hold their positions though. But only 2 players from one team could be in any of the midfield boxes, so having 4 red midfielders was fine, so long as there were only 2 in each box. Again, placing a slight restriction on them challenged them to think about what they were doing with their movements with or without the ball. I'll admit that this progression was slightly chaotic at first, but once the girls registered what was exactly being asked of them, there were some really nice passages of play. Some moments where they kept the ball, made a string of passes, or being slightly more direct by positive dribbling or passing. This session worked really well for us, but as I say, it was more designed to work upon certain areas that we'd identified needed slight tweaks to. This type of session is quite basic in its approach, however it could be used in similar strokes for higher age groups to incorporate players and movements not available at 7-a-side. Examples being a forward dropping deeper to get on the ball, a midfield player coming in and acting as a pivot, receiving the ball off a defender, or even a winger coming in off of the touchline to play in the inside channels and half spaces. Overall, I'd say this was quite effective once the girls worked out the areas they were playing in and the requirements of them once the progression was added. Rotating the players and changing the teams from the attacking to defending one is essential for the younger age groups so that all of them can get a sense for what would be required of them, and simply having that awareness will make them better players. So that wraps up the 2 session breakdowns. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please feel free to discuss anything in this video in the comments below or on Twitter with myself. I'm very keen to hear about any variations on these sessions or how you would do something differently. Again, go ahead and visit the A Manager's Journey blog for more session breakdowns and discussion on all things coaching, but also for interviews with current Utah Raptors first team coach and former Taiwan head coach Louis Lancaster, as well as Josh Shepard, who went from coaching non-league to the Bhutan Premier League. Once again, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll catch you in the next one.